Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the city of SeasSide. My name is Nick Borges. I am the police chief here in SeasSide, and today we have some very special guests. Here in SeasSide, this is our third SeasSide speaking series where we bring in some very high-profile guests and we discuss some very interesting topics. And there's an intent to all this stuff that we do, but today's purpose really is to have these two legendary gentlemen speak to us because they're a part of history that really is powerful. To my left here is Reggie Wright Sr., and Reggie Wright Sr. really is a true legend in the law enforcement community and beyond. He started his career in the late 60s and into the 70s and worked his way up to be a lieutenant in the Compton Police Department and in charge of the gang unit. And anyone that has heard of Reggie Sr., he's all over the internet. He's done interviews with very high-profile platforms. He is really, in my view, one of the originators of community policing because he grew up in a rough area and became a cop in a rough area and was still and is still very well respected. And that is just telling, and that's really a message for the police side that I want the police that are in the room to really walk away with, that if Reggie Sr. can do what he did all these years, it's a lesson to take away. And then his son, Reggie Jr. Reggie Jr. was a police officer, I believe. He'll talk about his past, but he started off in the jail and then worked also in Compton. But Reggie Jr., he ended up, and I don't want to tell his story for him, but he ended up having an injury and retiring from the police department. And as you know, he's got a business mind, so he started his security company. And growing up with some very high-profile people like Suge Knight and in that Compton area, he was able to, along the way, connect with them and be the head of security, which is a pretty damn big deal for Death Row Records, and was with them for a period of time, and very well-known guy. I want to give a shout-out to his platform, which is Bomb First. He has his T-shirt on right now, and we do have some giveaways later in the day that Gina's going to be in charge of. But if you're not familiar with Bomb First, if you go to YouTube, take a look at it. He's got a very powerful platform. And if you want to know the truth about anything, Reggie Jr. is that guy. And when you see him on his YouTube channel, if you follow him like I do, whenever he's leaning into the camera, click on that video because it'll be something good.
You know, Reggie, ever since this Diddy story broke and we've been covering it ongoing, it reminds me how important it is to have a good lawyer on your team. An injury could bring you millions and change your life forever, but you have to have the right team on your side. That's why I'm proud to present Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm. They have over 1,000 attorneys working in all 50 states, so when you're seriously injured, your injury could be worth millions. Morgan & Morgan don't just settle for the lowball offers. They fight for every dollar you deserve if you become their client. They just recently achieved some significant verdicts for their clients. $12 million in Florida, which is 34 times the highest insurance offer, and $26 million in Philadelphia, which was 40 times the highest insurance offer. With Morgan & Morgan, there's no upfront cost, and the fee is actually free unless you win. It only takes a few minutes to see if you have a case, and you can do so from the comfort of your home. If you've ever been seriously injured, your case could be worth millions, and you're only a few clicks away from potentially changing your life. It's easy to start your claim now. You can go to forthepeople.com/bomb or scan the QR code in the corner with your phone's camera.
With that, I'm going to pass this on to Reggie Sr. to kind of give an intro, and we'll start off with him just to talk a little bit about his background, growing up, where he grew up, and leading into how he became a police officer. So with that, I'd like to pass this to Reggie Sr.
Thank you, Chief. Good morning, everyone. I really appreciate you guys' attendance, taking your time to come and listen to an old man gab. That's basically what I do. But anyway, I was born and raised in New Orleans, Louisiana, a few semesters ago. It was about 1946 in New Orleans. But my family came to California, I think it was 1957. Actually, my dad and I first came out here. I'm a product of 16 siblings, and myself was 17 kids by the same mother and father who were true Catholics that didn't watch TV much. But anyway, I had two sets of twins. in that 17 boys and girls. So that was kind of that upbringing. But my dad and I first came out here to get established to bring the rest of them. I think at that time it was about 4 or 5 siblings I had. We didn't multiply until later. But anyhow, when he and I came out here, we lived out in the LA area for a while, and then we brought the family out here. My father worked for the post office for like 47 years or something, but he came to California because at that time it was a lot going on and people were migrating from the South to California. Now they're going back to the South. But anyway, that's how we kind of got started. I had a little trouble in coming up a little bit because we moved to Imperial Courts housing project back in the day. My friend that's sitting up front is a product of that Perry back in the day. And so I kind of had a pretty little tough upbringing myself. They didn't have what we would call gang members at the time or gangs noted. We were just, how would they call us? Misguided youths or something, you know. And then we had our little clubs and stuff, social clubs, as I was growing up. And we had all kind of activity going on, but it wasn't like it evolved into the 60s, 70s, and 80s with all this gang activity mess. But we did have our little troubles. I had my troubles. And so I think I spent about 2 weeks or 3 weeks in a juvenile center because I was hanging out with some people. But like I said, my daddy worked for the post office. He was very serious. And I was like one of them kind of kids that my mama said, you go crazy, but wait till your daddy get home. That worked. It worked for me. And it kept me out of serious trouble. It kept me out of always thinking that I had to go home and face him if I'd done something stupid. But I did one time. And I got in a little trouble. And I think I spent three weeks in juvenile hall. And my daddy came and talked to the judge because I was about to get a little time. And he told us about how he was struggling with his kids and coming out here and all that. And I wasn't a bad kid, but trust him, the judge would never see me again if he let me go home. And he did. And that kind of really shook me at that time to realize I can grow up in a community with some of the guys that was all about the life or crazy, but I didn't have to be. So I always use this that I'm using right now to get out of stuff and stay away from the hardcore stuff. Well, I started working for Mattel Toy back in the day, and then for about a year. Then I went to the Edison Company and began my career with them in 1969. And that really helped me a lot. I didn't know that at the time in police work because I started working for Southern California Edison as a meter reader. And at that time, it wasn't many blacks working in the Edison company. But they took to me because I had a very talkative way of life. So I became a favorite of the people at Edison, and they started moving me up. But in my job that I had from meter reader, I became a customer serviceman. At that time, back in the day, you didn't have all this technology with Edison like you did. You had basic guys that would go out, read your meter, actually physically read the meter. And then you also had a customer service job where if they had fuses in the back of houses at the time that need to be replaced when they blow out or stuff like that. And I used to do that, go out and I would meet people that way. But the main job I had with the Edison Company at one point was to be a collector of light bills in, quite frankly, in the black community. And so since I had some knowledge of the community by, you know, my upbringing and stuff, they had me to do this job where I had to go around and collect the money when your bill was overdue. And that was a challenge for me because I remember my mama used to hide behind a sofa and stuff when collectors used to come to our house and we would go and say, she's not home and all that. So that kind of was a challenge for me, like I said. But anyway, so what I would do, I would go, and if they didn't have the money at the time and stuff, I would have to turn their services off. I mean, if I wanted to stay in that job, I would have to do that. And I did that. But I would take a family member before I leave and show them how to reconnect it, you know. So once I left, my paperwork said it was off, you know. So I became kind of like famous in the community about, hey, if Miss Wright come out, I don't have to hide. Y'all just go with him. And so, but I learned a lot about the community of Compton. Now, I'm sorry, I should have prefaced it with that. This was the Compton community I was working in mostly. So at this time, this was about 1978, 79, or all of a sudden this, I would say, notoriety started coming about gang members. So a couple of the guys who I would show how to reconnect and put the fuse back in the whole shot were upcoming gang members. You know, some couple of them were shot callers like Turtle and Baby Gangster and them cats that I subsequently knew later. I left Edison Company, and no, I didn't leave first. I became a reserve police officer with Compton PD in 1976. And the thing was, is that I did that simply because my cousin, who was a captain in LAPD, always would come around because he worked the Watts area when he was coming up. And I always admired him, even though most of my friends they were about the life, you know, they were growing up doing crazy stuff. I always had an attraction to the police, you know, being a police officer. Well, I was fortunate enough to get on as a reserve at Compton PD. I think I was with Edison about 9 years, and then I became a reserve officer. That was about the time all this activity started kicking up with the drive-bys and all this kind of stuff. But I kind of knew most of the kids involved in it because, like I said, working the community and learning about them. So when I became a reserve officer, they put me on a detail to deal with some of that activity. And when we would go out to certain scenes, me as a reserve and with a regular patrol officer, I would always get caught up in dealing with the guys that were getting in a little trouble and stuff. I remember a time, I don't know if when I became a regular police officer in 1979, my cousin came over as chief of police from the captain that was at LAPD, Joe Roseanne. He came over and he talked me and my little brother, who was 10 years younger than me. I think I'm about 32 or 33 then. They talked me into becoming a regular police officer. I didn't want to. I was happy with playing police on the weekend and still working for the Edison Company. So as this mess was starting with these little teenagers, I would see them while I was doing my regular job and then had to start dealing with them as a police officer. Well, there was a guy, I was working as a reserve, and I'll bring up his name because he eventually got executed. His name is Tookie Williams. Okay, and Tookie, him and Baby Boy, they were one of the first. And if I'm looking at the crowd, most of y'all might not be old enough to know what I'm even talking about, but some may, a couple of us. But anyhow, Tookie was notorious for being this kind of guy that was real muscular, you know, because the thing back then, and Perry can probably attest to that, is that you would go to prison a lot. You didn't mind going to prison because it was all about going there, getting 3 meals and getting bucked. That's all they did. So everybody that would come out of the penitentiary or something, you know, these was brothers that were, you know, all about it. Well, Tookie was one of those guys along with Baby Boy, and they were notorious because they would go around with their shirts off and they would go to all these communities and stuff, showing their muscles and all this kind of stuff. Well, a big incident occurred, I don't know the year, where they had some type of activity at a venue, a concert or something. Now, my son tells me it was the Palladium, but my recollection tells me it was somewhere in LA. Terms, these officers might know what I'm talking about, but they jacked the guys for their jacket and stuff. Jacket for their jacket. But anyway, crazy. But anyway, they took it and they robbed them. And it became all over the news and stuff about this gang. Well, they didn't call them a gang then. These subjects that was all this and all that, who was just taking stuff for these kids and stuff. So anyway, they became notorious because of that. At that time, and I only mentioned Tookie to tell you about how notorious, to bring up something that happened when before I became a police officer with Tookie. He had an incident with my father. Like I said, we lived in the Imperial Courts, And Imperial, of course, was a big gym field and stuff. And my father used to have to work. If you had all these kids that he was having and all that, he had to drink his little pluck. And when he come home, he would go out on the on the gym field and stuff because he liked to play golf but never had time, I guess, too much. And he would do shots on the gym field. So apparently on this day, he was out on the gym field hitting it, and Tookie Williams, not knowing him, went up to him and told him, "Hey, old man, you don't be shooting no golf. You're gonna hit somebody." And he turned around and knocked my daddy out. I mean, I remember I told you he's big. My daddy was a little skinny though. He knocked him out, really. I'm at home. I'm working at the gymnasium now. Perry knows the gym that I was working. I was assistant director there or something. Young guy coaching the teams and stuff. A guy came to my house right quick and told me that, hey, Tookie Williams just knocked your father out over there at the gym. They taking him to Martin Luther King Hospital. I had just bought me a little 38 from Woody's Sporting Goods on there. I wasn't nobody. I wasn't one of these tough guys, a little puny thing. But I was going, and y'all would have never heard about Tookie Williams because I was gonna do something bad to Tookie, really, seriously. I mean, I was in that mindset, But anyway, I got stopped by a little gang leader over there named AB, Anthony Blaylock. I was their coach because I coached all of them. And he stopped me before I got to the gym field where they all would hang out. And he said, hey, coach, don't he didn't mean to do it. He didn't know Pops and all that. Let me introduce you to him. Not in that kind of way, but he was telling me that. So all of a sudden, he brought Tookie over to me, and he came over apologizing. Now, I'm a little scrawny, dude, but somebody must have told me I had something he didn't want to deal with in my pocket. So he came, and he was, sir, I'm sorry. I didn't know that was your dad and all that. And he reached his hand out to say, I'm sorry. And when he reached his hand out, I was reluctantly, but I shook his hand. He had $100 bill in his hand, and he kind of he gave it to me, and he said, that's for your daddy if you need anything. So I said, okay. I toned down, I backed off, and that was my little thing with Tookie at the beginning. Now Tookie started getting all this notoriety that subsequently, doing this crazy mess. When I became a reserve officer, they had a call that went out about midnight, about 12 or 1 o'clock. 415 disturbance. Subjects are all out in the middle of the street. They done shut down the street and they partying and stuff. The lead person over there is Tookie Williams and his little entourage, these little fools. The police at that time, and I say there wasn't but about 2 or 3 blacks on the department at that time, 4, but we had one big dude named Ron Rosser. He was Compton's enforcer, or whatever. But all of Mike started clicking and stuff when the thing went out and say, hey, we got to go over there and deal with Tookie Williams. They went to off frequency. We call it frequency 2. And they said, hey, is Rosser here? Is Rosser here? He needs to go with us over here to this incident. Well, we went. But before we start going, I'm just a little rookie. And Ron says, looked at me. He says, what's on your mind? I said, well, I know Tookie. He said, you don't know nothing about this. What you talking about? This is a gangster. This is, he all this. And can't nobody deal with him but me, Ron. That's why we all gonna meet and get together and go over there. And we did. And when we got in the area, the street was blocked off. They was out there partying. They had them boom boxes and stuff on top of the car. And it was a mess. And there wasn't but about 7 or 8 of us, because we had a small department like Chief had, or something like that. It wasn't about 7 or 8 of us. And we kind of gathered and went over there. And I told him, I said, hey, man, I know Tookie, I can deal with. You just stay like a rookie. You just stay on the side. You ain't got nothing to say to him. He don't know you. I said, okay. So we go over. We got out the car and stuff. We surrounded him and started walking up. And as soon as we started walking up, Tookie with his shirt off and baby boy standing beside him, come walking up toward Ross and said, I know they were going to send your butt over here, to deal with us. And then he looked and he saw me standing next to Ross in uniform. He said, Coach, you the police? You the police? I said, yeah. He said, what you want us to do, Coach? I said, y'all know y'all can't be doing this and that. And he said, turn around to the crowd. We out of here. We out of here. And they all got in their cars and they left. After that, I became Ron Rosser then, because all the calls they would get is Reggie Wright on the night? Is he on the night? I only went through that story and I took up a lot of time only to show you my introduction to being able to deal with these types of individuals, and got a little reputation from there. So anyway, I didn't have to deal with that thing, but like I said, I became a regular police about a year or two after that when my cousin came over and me and my brother. And so then we got from there. At that time, I think it's 78 or 80. Uh, they were, I think the Vietnam War guys were getting out and they started this phenomenon of drive-by shootings or something like that. But the thing was, at the time, we weren't, like I said, I was known as, my detail was known as a graffiti detail. They wasn't calling us a gang detail or anything. But a young lady, unfortunately, in about 1982, got shot in a crossfire between two rival gangs. Now, the gangs at that time, in 81, 82, had the finances and stuff to come out of the hood. Because a lot of this gang activity and stuff was going on, and they wasn't calling it gang activity. They were just calling it these youths and this, and we weren't getting much publicity because, quite frankly, most of it was uh, in the community. Blacks shooting blacks or whatever, or Hispanics on Hispanic. So it didn't get all that notoriety. But the day in 82 or 83 that these gang members, because they were selling cocaine, because the rock cocaine had started coming into the neighborhood, they had the finances to take their activity out of the community. And they went one day to a movie in Westwood, right near UCLA. And the two gang rivals, the Bloods and the Crips, and I'll get into inception of them right quick. But they were out there and they got into a confrontation and they started shooting at each other. And this poor young lady, Terry Tashima, got shot in the crossfire. I believe she was a UCLA student or something like that. And the family was kind of, the next day after that shooting occurred, all of a sudden in the paper, or the day after in the time, LA County has 7,000 gang members in our community. I'm looking at this and I'm going, what? We've been having for the last 10 years. Where y'all been? But that's when it was recognized, and all the departments at that time were allowed to call yourself a gang detail because we have gang activity. Well, gang activity started 10 years before the community would recognize, not the community, the officials, the city officials and stuff would allow you to call that. So it got crazy. And we all know they started having the drive-bys and they started having all this activity. But in 86 or 87, when the crack cocaine hit the community and stuff, it really got out of hand simply because now they have finances. The brothers, they didn't have to break in your house anymore, and they weren't doing like Tookie Williams, hitting you and beating you up and stuff. They had money because they were selling their crack on the street, and that epidemic just became crazy. Well, that's when they allowed myself, well, the chief, he became the chief, then my cousin, put me over a gang detail finally. And that's when I got a couple of guys to work along with me. First, I started off myself and another guy, Steve Beckman, who ended up being the chief in Chino because he was fluent in Spanish and everything, a white guy. And then he was on my graffiti detail. But then we became a gang detail and started dealing with all this problem. But we would go to crime scenes now because these guys now with the money would go and they would start buying these assault weapons, AR-15 and all these different type of. I didn't even know what that mess was about because in the project we ain't had nothing but that little 38 I talked about or something like that. So I didn't even know what all this assault was because I never went to the military. But apparently a lot of these guys that were in the military got drafted and stuff in the Vietnam War. They start getting dishonorable discharges and stuff, and after 2 or 3 years. But they had been trained to do this hit and run tactic that was known during the Vietnam War. They'd be in trees and stuff and sniping and all this kind of stuff. So a lot of them came back to our community with that mentality because they were trained. And I think that's how they basically start doing these drive-bys, and all of a sudden the families became victims because they were shooting up houses, shooting up cars. They didn't care anything about your mother or your sister or your brother who's in the house. And that phenomenon just got out of control, out of control. But myself and Brendan Ladd and these kind of guys, we would get the intelligence in order to start dealing with it. And then finally, the main thing that happened right about that time, we didn't have much help to even deal with all this crime and gang buildup and all that kind of stuff. But the Cold War had ended in about, I don't know, what, 80 something. All these agencies didn't have uh, all these government people deployed in Europe or wherever. They didn't have anything for them to do. And so now, since this outburst of gang ravaging throughout communities and stuff was in LA County, they said, we're going to send you some help. I get a call one day, and it was from some FBI agent or something. And they said, hey, we want to form a task force to help y'all to deal with this gang violence and stuff. And eventually, they start sending guys from acronyms I never heard of before. DEA, I hadn't, I was just dealing in my little area. DEA, DOJ, acronyms I never heard of before. And I said, okay, but they came over and they start working with us and formed this big task force. And that's how we were able to deal with a lot of that activity as it built up. But me personally, in my little community, the things that were happening, I was fortunate enough to be successful in making a lot of arrests because of having a community interaction as a police. When you came from what they were trying to get into, you can relate a lot better. And I think your chief, in talking to him, he has a sort of experience like that later, maybe some 30 years after me, and doing it in his community, but it works. Whenever you are able enough to relate to your community and you interact as law enforcement positively, which community, I'm not saying that you're not supposed to be the police and let guys get away with committing crime. But I tell you, even the hardest gangsters that I dealt with in a lot of things that actually call me up or call a news station and surrender on murders and stuff, they respected the fact that you know how to deal with them and talk to them. So getting intelligence is a very important aspect of solving a lot of crimes and stuff. So it's very important to be able to relate, and they call it back in the day community policing and stuff. I'm telling you, that's the way as police officers you get a lot. You get more sugar. I'm trying to come up with a parable, but like I tell the chief, I have a Joe Biden moments, and I'll be talking and right into rolling, right, and all of a sudden I might start telling you about what happened across the ocean or something. But anyhow. Now help me get back on track. 78 years old, so I'm still here, but thank God. Go ahead.
I think he would say the honey with sugar.
Oh yeah, but I ain't worried about that part of it. But I was just saying, just intelligence, getting community interaction. Because I'm telling you, you don't get anywhere, especially in an urban community or a community that has a lot of activity going on. You kicking butt and taking name is not always the answer. It's some brother in the areas of not just brothers, but period people that they respect you when you respect them in a certain way. If you come at them right, you'll be surprised what you'll get from them. And that's the best way to go. And as far as my career and the things that you may read, we have some books up here you guys will see. And if you ever get interested in the details, some of the actual things that went down, like I was mentioning about, well, I didn't really get into that. I got into a tookie. That didn't have anything to do with police work. But I had a lot of experiences with guys that were hard as a rock. I mean, they'll slap their mama, that kind of respected how I came at them because you kind of related to them and treat them right. But I would take their butts to jail. If you did something wrong, they said, call Reggie Wright. He'll take you to jail. But you ain't have to worry about going through no changes or all that. I'm just mentioning that as a tactic that'll work. And I found out this community here, I don't know if you guys are under that type of stuff, but it could happen. It could happen because and knowing how to relate and interact. And that's why I'm so glad that Chief, when he told me about this, I thought it was going to be a bunch of police officers sitting here, not members from the community. But it really makes me grateful that look like community members came out to find out, how can they best or hey, what did you do back in that day to get the success that you did? And I'm just rumbling through it right quick because this boy here talk as much as me. So the thing is that I love you a lot, Perry. Don't spoil it. But anyhow, that's kind of like an overview of how I got started, the things I got involved in, how I kind of got the cooperation, or I don't want to say, well, the respect, because how you come at it, and that's what I was all about. But in wanting to know some details or some specific incidents, when Reggie gets to it about the books and stuff, uh, you'll see in it if you want some good stories. They're inside because my guys that work for me, that were right in the middle of it, Brennan and Ladd and Fred Reynolds and stuff like that, guys, and these types of books. And when after we're over with, you can come over, take a picture of it or something, and they are $19 or something. If you're really interested in finding out what went on during that day and some of the things, these are the things you want to do.
Can I ask you a follow-up question?
Sure.
You've been around a long time, and you were back in the LA area when the Crips and the Bloods, Pyrus really formed. What did that look like in your opinion, and what you saw? How did that begin? How did that start?
Okay. And the division between now their theories on even there's a big theory out about how the name Crip really came about to say that these guys are Crips. I mean, I don't know if some of you guys heard the stories or something. They said back in that time when I talked about that incident where they hijacked the guy for his jacket and was doing all that. Some news, I think he was telling me Putnam, George Putnam back in the day came on the TV and was talking about these guys that was doing these activities. One of them had a cane or something, and he would walk like he was crippled or something. I heard that. I heard what was the other one that Kennedy talk about theories about
Well,
somebody in the YTS or something.
yeah, because they gave out blue rags in YTA, YTS, CYA, and they all used to give out blue rags, and so they came up with that. The Pyrus will say that they call it for cowards running in packs. You hear stuff like that, but I think the theory was about the cripple part, where the guy said crip instead of the word cripple. Is the most one that's out there. But as Reggie, I call him Reggie, but my father will say, is he was young when he had me, and he always had me around, and he didn't want to have people to know he had a son that age. So, that's what my mama would always say.
There you go. That's where you got that from. But anyway, anyway, though, as Chief was leading me toward is how that really got started and stuff. But in the Compton area, the first group of guys that called themselves Crips kind of dominated the Compton area. At that time, early, there weren't any Bloods or Pyrus or anything. It was mainly Crips. And in Compton's about 10 square miles. Long, or I think population of about 95 to 100,000 people at the time in the Compton area. But the center of Compton was Compton High School. They had an east side and a west side. Now, Compton High School just so happened their colors were blue and black. So most of those Crips, most of those guys in that area who call themselves Crips, always started at Compton High. Now, my little group and that group of Crips, Crips came from mostly dense housing tract, like projects or apartments or something like that. And they mostly weren't two-parent families. And so they were kind of like loose. So they dominated the middle of the city and was bullying all the good kids or the football players and all that kind of stuff. And they became Crips. So that on the west side of Compton, on the west end, there's a school called Centennial. That's the high school there. And Centennial basic colors were red. A lot of the guys, like I'll say some of their names, like Puddin and Sylvester Scott and Lil Vince and all them, lived on Pyru Street in Compton. And they kind of didn't want to be dealing with these. They were anti-Crips. And they got tired of being bullied by 'em. So they formed their own little group and they adopted the red rag because of the Crips had the blue. But those cats during that time, they came from mostly two-family homes because on the west side, you know, you had two-family homes and decent things. Now the Crips at Compton High, they were from Compton High. They went up to school, but they didn't go in school. Now the difference with the Pyrus, by Ray's family, they were a little more sharper, intelligent, I should say, because they went into school. And that was because they had parents that stayed on top of them and all that kind of stuff. And they were outnumbered when they first got started, almost 10-1. And they were all of a sudden beginning to challenge these Crips. So they had to come up with their own little thing, and they became Pyrus, and some of them were notorious and crazy, or even though they might have came from decent families like I said I wasn't gonna say names, but anyway, Marcus Nunn and all these cats that started the East Side Pyru, but it started on the West Side with Puddin, Sylvester Scott, and all them at Centennial. On the East Side of Compton, there was Dominguez High School, whose colors were basically red and gold. So they adopted this East Side thing. It started around Lula's Park area over there on the East Side. The West Side said that, and then that's when the feud started. And like I said, the Pyrus were much smarter in their tactics than Crips. Crips will shoot you in front of a priest or a preacher. They didn't care. Pyrus were more sophisticated and stuff because they had to be. They were outnumbered. So that phenomenon kind of exploded in the 80s and stuff. And especially when they had the money, like I said, to buy the AK-47. And we used to go to crime scenes when I first started. You would find a shell case or two. But all of a sudden, when they were able to, the Crips and Pyrus were able to buy these assault weapons and stuff, at a homicide crime scene or drive-by shooting, you would find 40 or 50 shell cases all over on the crime scene. It was a challenge. It was a challenge. But trying to deal with it or try to suppress it, that's where that task force I was telling you about really came in to help us to kind of really combat that kind of thing. But then all of a sudden, about the latter part, the 80s and 90s, like I said, these guys were, and crack cocaine, you can't forget about that. That had a tremendous impact on the community and the gang members, because now, all of a sudden, they had control of the crack cocaine, because in jail, they met the Colombians and stuff in jails and stuff, and the Colombians would pick out the shot callers in the jails from the Crips or the Piru area, and they would distribute cocaine to them. When they got out, they set them up, and that's how it was so much cocaine in our community. I mean, everybody was attacked, professionals, teachers, even some police officers and stuff got hooked on that crack. So it was madness. It was madness in it. But all of a sudden, one day, I'll never forget, and I'll be real quick. I know my time is short, but I told you I'll be talking too much. But anyway, I said how you had this rivalry. You had these guys hating each other, killing each other, and they had shot callers. And Baby Gangster and Lil Twin were Crips. Santana Crips. They were shot callers. And then in Fruitown, you had what Fruitown was a West Side Bloods. You had two shot callers in that area. One day, me and one of my guys, we riding down the street, we see a car going down the street, and in front of it, it was two Fruitown Piru shot callers driving. And me and Bobby looked at the car, in the back seat was Gangster and this other twin, who hard Crips. And I looked at Bobby, I said, damn, they done kidnapped twin in there. I'm thinking they about to, they can do something to him, right? So anyway, we pull them over. This is 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening, and these cats know it. Soon as we pull them over, the Piru dudes got out because Bobby Baker, this was a guy who was magna cum laude or something in college or something, but he was rivaling with other Piru and gang, especially when they start getting involved in the record industry, the gangster. And that's when I guess I can lead into Reggie to talk about how gang members he grew up with and stuff got involved with Suge and the death row thing and all that. Any questions y'all might have about me after his
Well,
finish his thing?
before we go there, I
Uh,
just want to explain the difference between Pyrus and Bloods. because,
Oh, yeah.
the Bloods is really a LA thing, LA community. Pyrus is originated from Compton. You don't have any Bloods in the city of Compton. They all call themselves Pyrus. We mainly talk a lot about Comptons because we both work Compton. He was the gang expert for the city of Compton. But we didn't want to slight LA because LA have Bloods prior, even before the Pyrus did, in Compton, even though the Crips originated from the Grandees, which for most of you historians will know about the Grandees part of the city of Compton. But I'll let him go, the chief, because he have a list that he would ask us.
Yeah, that was actually my next question, is just to make sure everyone understands the difference between Bloods and Pyrus.
Even though Pyrus say blood, just because of the red and the association of being together. But Pyrus, you very rarely hear too many blood sets from LA calling themselves Pyrus. However, you do have other Pyrus sets that started to go out. You have the Pacoima Pyrus, which is out in the valley of Los Angeles. You have them up in San Diego. You even have some in Moreno Valley now and West Covina. But Pyrus, Inglewood have a few. So you do have some Pyrus, but they mainly came from the city of Compton, from a street in Compton called Pyrus Street.
And just for the Seaside people in the room, Seaside, and some of the old school people will remember this before my time, but Seaside picked up on this, and Seaside was one of the small cities in California that picked up the Crip gang unit or gang name. So Seaside to this day still has people claiming Crip. And it really, if you understand the history, it really was based out of the LA area and spread as far as Seaside. So that's pretty unique. I want to go to Reggie Sr. as we transition a little bit, and then we'll go back and forth. But I think everyone in this room knows the name Suge Knight. I don't need to say anything further. But Reggie Sr., if you could tell a little bit about you knowing Suge Knight coming up, and then kind of lead into, I believe he came to you at some point wanting some security services, and then we can transition into Reggie Jr.
Well, back in the day when I was working for Edison, we lived in Compton on Pine Street. I don't know if any of y'all know about the Compton community. They had a big Sears complex over that area, and we lived right in that area. Well, Suge also lived about 2 blocks from where Reggie was raised on Pine Street. Actually, both of them went to Bourbon Day. Oh no, Junie went to Bourbon Day. I call him Junie sometimes. He went to Bourbon Day and Suge went to Linwood, but Reggie went to Linwood at a period, and him and Suge became friends there because I think they played football. Suge was a little older than Reggie, and they were at school together, living in that area. But Suge Knight, no matter, and he'll tell you more about it, he wasn't no gangbanger, gangster like he wanted to claim. He just adopted that because all of a sudden he got into this record and started making money and had to have these guys to back him up. And he'll tell you more about, I used to call them the Suge Knight security and the police security. Reggie had the police security for Death Row. Suge had his my Pyru friends that he wanted to associate, who was his security. So anyway, that's kind of that little setup. But I'll let him get more into it.
And can you just talk about how he approached you?
Suge, yeah. But anyway, Suge lived in the community and watched him grow up and all that. So when he started making this money and stuff and having this problem and stuff within the community and all that, he knew he needed some type of security. But he always respected me, and so he had Reggie to have me to meet with him to see if I would become his security director of Death Row. But then Reggie set up a little something. I met with him at a restaurant in Compton, and that's when he presented how he would like for me to become his director. But at
Well,
that
tell
time,
before then,
what's that?
what the hell, you had got some intel to lead up to that conversation.
The intel about somebody
They were
wanted
gonna
to
rob
shoot
him.
him,
Yeah.
rob and kill. Oh, well, Reggie, see, I got him. I told him to stay close because he's gonna have to snap me out of my Joe Biden stuff. So he's supposed to hit me. The chief is taking Reggie's role right now in a sense and kind of keeping me in track. But Suge, we had gotten some intel and stuff that some of his own people, some of them gangsters that were running around with him that we're gonna rob him, kidnap him and rob him and stuff. And so I wanted to kind of warn him, he better look out for his people. That's when he came to me and said, hey, I would like for you to run my security. I go, hey, wait a minute, bro. I learned a long time ago. You don't do that. I don't get involved. I'm the police. Half of them people you run around with, I'm going to eventually put them in jail because I'm, as Denzel Washington said, I'm putting cases on 'em. You know, I'm going to be putting, some of these guys know what I'm talking about. but anyway, I'm putting cases on some of them guys. So I don't need to be doing that. You don't do that. I said, but I know a guy who has a security company that you guys that he knew of. I said, but that's their thing. Unbeknown to me, my son was side-eyeing me because he had just started his security business because had gotten injured and was about to leave the Compton Police Department, and he had started his own security. I didn't know anything about that. About 3 or 4 days later, I found out that all of a sudden he done met with Suge, and Suge had hired him in his security to start working for him because they knew each other. And that's kind of how that got started and stuff. But no.
Thank you for that. That's some of you may have known that, but I found that out not that long ago. I thought that was very interesting. If we could transition into Reggie Jr., if you could talk about your upbringing, your police experience, and leading up to where your father just left off.
First of all, I want to thank all you guys for coming out, and especially you, Chief, and your assistant for putting this together, and you know, seeing us fit to even come to something like this. We really appreciate it, and you guys again for coming out. Growing up, of course, my father was always my hero, right? He forgot and he didn't talk about how he really was more into coaching and you know, bringing up kids with coaching baseball and basketball in the Imperial Courts Housing Projects area. And so I was always with my father. So of course my father was always my hero. I was fortunate enough to come from a two-parent home. And so growing up with him, so I always wanted to be a cop. I'm one of those guys that was a police explorer at 14 in the summer that worked the records department. So I can tell you everything about running a records division. I was a CSO at the age of 18, a community service officer. Went out and took cold police reports and learned how to work, the communication system center and work the comms. We call it the comms
Nepotism.
center. Actually, not. As I tell people that all the time, he didn't run that hill in Rio Hondo Police Academy. I had to get up 6 in the morning and run that hill. So if y'all know anything about police academy, which some of y'all do, nepotism go out the window. But
Got
so
it in the door.
So anyway, law enforcement is always was my desire to be. So I got hired on early as an early age. Started, like I said, working for the police department at the age of 18. But one thing they wouldn't allow me to do was to apply to be a police officer till I, finish school. And so I attended Cal State Long Beach and finally obtained that. And at the age of 22, I became a police officer. But during that period from 18, I was one of those that worked and worked the job and was going to school. And so I worked communications and I worked the jail where I finally continued until the age of 22. In 1989, I ended up going to the academy and graduating from Rio Hondo Police Academy. All right. So that was my goal, life goal to, always be in law enforcement and all of that. Worked the riots, the riots in 1991. Was on the fast track, was doing real well. I was Reggie Jr., so of course everybody knew me. Different way of policing. I was young. I'm one that believe now shouldn't be a cop until you're at least 26, 27. No disrespect to anyone that's younger that, got that opportunity, but I didn't know half the things that I know now that I thought I knew at the age of 21, 22. But I took some headaches, but luckily I had some, good people around to keep me in track and be like, boy, you gonna get fired. You keep going down that line of the path, because I took some of the sergeants, the the kick butt, take names type or experienced officer. And my father was always totally different. I know it seemed like he was patting himself on the back a lot and saying things, but trust me, if y'all really go and do the research and listen to some of the guys on YouTube and stuff that talks about the gang members, y'all see that everything that he said comes to be true. That he was different after the Daryl Gates era of policing, and then you remember when LAPD wanted to go into the community service type policing when they brought Chief Willie Wills in from Philadelphia, and I'm talking mid '90s, and so he was already on that, a way of thinking for law enforcement, but I didn't take that, and so I had to learn, and then once I got about 23, 24 is when you find out that you can get really far to get yourself in a lot of trouble if you're not thinking right. So I had to go through those eras. I eventually I had a car accident off duty originally, and then I re-aggravated it on duty in an on-duty pursuit. Uh, Chasing some guys that just did a drive-by. We did that a lot. I mean, we had a lot of drive-bys going on in our cities in the mid '90s. Uh, some car dealerships that was in Compton and trucking companies and all that. There was always some private security work in the city of Compton. But then, like I said, we had that meeting with Suge. I'm still at this point only like 27, 28 years of age. The rap era was crazy. I'm still young. I wasn't married at the time. And so I wanted to be around that environment. And so I started working for Death Row. And I really was trying to be just a legit police officer, good guy. And they had their side and he had their side. And he really wanted that because he had just got out of that lawsuit with Snoop Dogg, where they had a bodyguard that shot and killed someone, which it turned out to have been self-defense and it was legit. But they still had to pay $4.5 million because of the civil part of it, because of the non-training of the guy that was carrying the gun, that got into the shooting, and all of that. Snoop had to go through the trial, and all of that almost could have went either way. And so they understood that they needed professional security around them, and it wasn't like they needed. And I was always try to sell them this. You just needed good witnesses, good people to try to get you out of situations. Not that these are hired assassins or people that's going to be walking around shooting up everybody and so that was always my push with the security company, trying to sell against the big guys and just have the smart law enforcement to train guys to really keep you out of a lawsuit for the hundreds of, you got $100 million company, so you need to be able to protect yourself. So I was really one of the first ones that started getting guys to get away from the big bodyguards and just to get off-duty police officers to work, to work off duty in this rap world. And so the problems I started having was you had other agencies following these guys around. And because I did it all legit, had work permits put in and everything with all my guys. I had a police department myself from different agencies. Any LA County agency, I probably had one or two guys that worked for my for my security company at the time. And we're talking about 95 to 96. And we wasn't just working for Death Row, but Death Row was my biggest contract. But then what's happened, unfortunately, and I understand now, at 28 years of age, making good money, I didn't understand it. I was like, what you talking about, Chief? You gave me permission to do this? That's my friend. We just hanging out. I'm not working no more or anything like that. But what happened was those agencies, the FBI and those task force was coming to the chief like, hey, why are your guy and all these badges keep coming out every time we go to think we're about to get them on something. These guys coming out with badges and stuff. Like I said, I didn't understand at the time. I really thought we was trying to do the right thing. It turned out that, and I understand from a management side of things, we weren't doing the right thing. And I was, and the guys that was working for me was embarrassing law enforcement and putting a black eye on law enforcement. But at the time, I really felt we were doing the right things because now the guys wasn't getting in trouble. I was really got close with Suge Knight where he would really listen to me. I remember an incident where, and he just recently on a podcast called me a Judas because, I've been talking and I explained why we were on the way to an award show with the Soul Train Music Awards. And I'm just trying to show you where I was trying to play, I guess, both sides of the fence or whatever. With their whole plan, he had a whole bunch of guys in these shirts, these P-Funk shirts, that was going to go on the stage and pull Biggie Small off the stage and disrupt the Soul Train Music Awards. Me knowing it was an LAPD cop, lieutenant, he's a commander now, his name was Keffe Davis, was in charge of the security at the place. I called him and said, hey man, don't let these guys in wearing all these particular shirts because they plan on going to be disruptive. So in my mind, I felt I was doing the right thing. It turned out later that I wasn't, and that law enforcement didn't care for it. And then the things that I was doing, working with them, that they hearing about, I learned that I did. They didn't care for it. They looked at it as being Judas. And so I had all of those particular issues dealing with in the music business and dealing with Death Row. However, because of the relationship and still maintaining with them, I did, and I think really because of the respect that a lot of the guys have for Reggie Sr., I got a lot of pass where I eventually even started when Suge got incarcerated and was running a record company. I ran the record company and became more on the business side and the music business from there. So that's just a little history and me just spelling out what happened, the goods and the bads that went on with me working and how me working for the record companies was the problems. Now, there was a lot of good things and benefits from it, and a lot of things I exposed, and the chief have a bunch of questions, and I'm a rambler, so I'd rather for him just to ask me the question and just, and answer his questions. But that's just the basics on me. For those the good that you heard or the bad that you heard about me, I try to be very transparent because now it's over. And I have been, recently I still work with law enforcement on some things. The Keffe Davis, Keffe D, the guy that's on trial currently with for the shooting of Tupac Shakur. I was very instrumental with helping bringing him onto YouTube and talk. And also with the prosecution currently of him, of laying out the atmosphere of what's going on. And so it was just an interesting ride coming from the law enforcement side and working for the music company like that. My only thing would be for people that want to do both, just to advise that it really is a thin line. And I know that we were taught in the academy, they started teaching us, because I'm like an 89 graduate, how they was trying to say, get other friends and don't just be cop friends and all of that. But it's a hard line to straggle, when you work in law enforcement and then also trying to have friends that are plumbers. It's hard.
I have a follow-up question. I'm going to go back to Senior just to get your perspective. As this is happening with your son, he's now into death row. Death row, going back to that era, I mean, there was an entire East Coast, West Coast rivalry, and Compton, we'll talk a little bit about the night Tupac was shot, but Compton is already exploding with drugs and crime. What is your perspective now that your son is basically in with Death Row Records and Suge Knight and everything? What's going through your mind?
Well, some of the concerns that I had when Suge came to me asking me to become his director of security and all, those challenges and those things that I was concerned about fell upon him when he got involved, still having a father that's deep into criminal enforcement in Compton, the thing was is I tried to explain to him, because I used to call that death row security, Suge, his police security and then his gangster security. Because the other guys that he had from the hood and stuff, that Reggie even had to challenge in working with Suge at death row. So it was a problem. And it kind of became a problem for me as well, because as he said, the agencies that were following, or the task force that was following members of Suge's entourage and stuff, were still doing their criminal activity while they were going to these concerts or playing the security with him, with Suge. You know, it was just a bad mix. It was just a bad mix. And so it affected me a lot, because I started losing my credibility with other supervisors and stuff in other agencies, because they didn't trust me. You know, and I used to were able to get a lot of intelligence to support their efforts as law enforcement. I was able to get a lot of that, but if I brought that to them a lot, it was some reluctance to accept it because of the connection I had with Suge and with him. So that was some of the challenges he had in running it. But for me, yes, and mainly you brought up, and they'll get into the Tupac shooting the night of that, but I had gotten all kind of intelligence from my informants an hour after the shooting went down. Now, Reggie called me as soon as he found out about it and told me that Tupac was shot. And he told me he was dead because he believed he was dead that night, and Suge had got shot. So I started trying to work my people as to what happened. But what Reggie was finding out on that end, I was finding out from informants who was hitting my pager, telling me about what had just happened. So I knew basically who were the suspects, where they were heading. And it's 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm trying to call Las Vegas PD to give them that information. But soon as I said Reggie Wright, they associated me because they were confused. Oh, we got a Reggie Wright out here, you know, that's supposed to be over the security. And you talking about a Reggie Wright lieutenant from Compton. They shut me down immediately. Matter of fact, I tried to talk to a lieutenant or a captain over homicide 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning to give them leads. And they just completely shut me down and quit taking my calls. And eventually my chief called me 5 or 6 o'clock, said, Reggie, I got to take you off of this because they all of a sudden don't want to deal with you because they don't trust what's going on. That's how it really impacted me from my end. So naturally, I wasn't happy with that. But we're still able to get a lot of intelligence and feed them and fed it to them. But
Yeah.
that's a story for another day, their reaction to that.
And for Reggie Jr., so again, this year, growing up in this area, long before I was a police officer, the East Coast, West Coast thing, I had never even been on an airplane, by the way, when this all happened. But I hated everybody from the East Coast, just living out here. But I don't feel that way today. Tell me how that started. How did this East Coast, West Coast rivalry start? And I know you've talked a lot about Tupac being shot the first time. He was shot in New York at Quad Studios. Can you talk about how this started?
Yeah, well, the media or social media and all of that would blame the magazines, the magazine articles. It was a big article that appeared on the Vibe magazine back then, which was a big hip hop magazine that was owned by Quincy Jones. And it was the East Coast versus the West Coast is what they put on. And they had a picture of Tupac and a picture of Biggie on the cover of it. So that's what we always blamed on it. It was mainly this a rivalry between 2 record labels, between Bad Boy Records and Death Row. Believe it or not, when I first started working with Suge in 94, 95, him and Puffy were cool. They were decent friends. But Tupac was in prison, and I accompanied Suge when he went up to the prison was talking to Tupac. And Tupac was in there, and he was adamant, believed that Biggie, Small, and Puffy and Bad Boy Records had something to do with him getting shot the time he got shot at the studio at the Quads. And he was like, I'm going to sign to you, Suge, but I need your backup and your support. And because I'm going after them as a crew, as a record label. You know, I'm going after them hard. So Suge really took on Tupac's beef with 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 um with Bad Boy Records, but it grew from there where then it became a East versus West because people on the East Coast were taking offense to it, and so they were going to Biggie's defense, and they started saying stuff, putting out rumors that Tupac had got raped in prison. You had rappers saying that it was all type of things and rumors that was going on, and so we had went out there to do a video shoot called New York, New York, and Biggie Small got on the radio. Tupac was only on the record label at this time for 2 months. He got out October of '95, and in December, Biggie's on the radio talking about, hey, how can they come out here? And he had the trailer shot up where, on the video shoot. And so now, Tupac is like, they only doing this to you guys because y'all was cool with them because I'm over here and they got a problem with me. And so that's how it grew. But if you ever listen and you know any of the lyrics to the song Hit 'Em Up, that didn't come out until the end of like April, that's when Tupac was trying to name names at the end of it. Because we had learned at that point that this is becoming an East Coast versus West Coast. And stop alienating the East Coast, Tupac. People from the East Coast was getting to him that was still has some allegiance to us and was like, you need to call off names. And so that's why on that song, he told all the people that he had a problem with to try to downplay and just say, I have a problem with you, Little Kim. I have a problem with you, the Mafia, Junior Mafia group, and Chino XL, because he the one that started the rape allegations, and he was speaking on that big. And so that's why he called off names. But unfortunately, within that time period, before he was able to make people understand that it wasn't an East Coast, West Coast, it was just about them, certain people, it had already blew up. Magazines was running with it. And before he can clear it up, he was later shot, which I don't believe had anything to do with the East Coast, West Coast. That was just some game banging stuff that happened from Tupac putting his hands on somebody he shouldn't have.
That started that phenomenon of what they call dissing on wax or stuff like that, and so other artists start dissing each other. Like right now to the day, you got with that Drake and somebody.
Kendrick Lamar.
Yeah, they haven't anything, but all that started back in that day with that dissing, that East Coast, West Coast dissing. I used to call them what they call it, wax bandits or something. They were studio gangsters. They wasn't no real hard gangsters. Most of them
And in
guys
fairness,
going through all that.
my father don't know hip hop too much. It started a little bit before that with Kumo D and LL and Ice Cube and No Vaseline, NWA.
They never came through the hood.
Yeah.
Ice Cube.
So
Right.
here's a follow-up question for you. So correct me if it was not the Source Awards. I think it was the Source Awards. But in my mind, when Suge Knight took the stage, he was receiving an award.
Correct.
And he made that statement.
Correct.
And I remember back in the day, by the way, social media for us was MTV. So you'd watch MTV, you'd hear a story. But I remember him speaking out and bumping into whoever was next to him. But he made that comment and he was insinuating, which I believe was Puffy.
Okay.
Can you talk about that in the background and your involvement in being there?
Yes, sir. So what happened on that day, and I remember it because it was the day before my birthday, which is August the 5th. That particular war show was on August the 6th. But we had just flew up to the prison because he was up near Canada in New York in a prison meeting Tupac. And that's when David Kenner, who was the company's attorney and also criminal and entertainment attorney, had just told us that, hey, we got a shot. The judge is going to grant him a appeal bond, and he's going to be coming home. And so we had just got that information, which was probably the 4th or the 3rd or something like that. So when Suge made that announcement, and the guy that he said he was bumping into was an artist that he was trying to blow up at the time named Danny Boy, R&B singer. And he was making an announcement, and that was his way of making an announcement to Diddy, Puffy, that I'm riding with Tupac now. When that's why most people don't know we had a cages of sales, and each artist came out of the sales and rapped their verse. But in that far right corner, if you really look, he had a picture of Tupac in that cell. And that was his way of announcing to the whole industry that Tupac was now with Death Row. And by him saying that, and that's why he said at the end of the speech, keep your guards up, Tupac. And he was just announcing to everybody that, excuse me. And for those of you who don't wonder why I'm in this wheelchair and everything, I caught COVID and in 2020. And my family was told to take me off the ventilator, but I survived and beat COVID. And this is why I woke up paralyzed from the neck down. But thank God for God and therapy, I'm coming back. But anyway, so excuse me, sometimes I cough because that COVID kicks your butt in the lungs. But
But you don't have the symptoms now, so. I start scaring people.
but now, my doctor tell me all the time, you couldn't catch COVID now if you wanted to. But so anyway, what I was saying though is, so that was his way of announcing to Diddy and them that he Tupac was with him and our friendship was over, which led up to a month later. They go out to Atlanta to a Jermaine Dupri party, and one of his God be looking out for me. I don't know why he loves me so much, but I love him as much as well. I missed the flight. I literally was supposed to be getting on the plane and missed the flight. I saw the door shut. They go out there and they get into a fight, and the bodyguard probably was standing where I was standing, which Reggie always talk about the homeboy security. And I missed the flight. The homeboy security made the flight. They got into an altercation out there. I do believe I would have calmed the situation down. His name was Jake Robles, and he got killed out there, Big Jake. And that's when the war between Death Row and Suge really took off. And then, as the trailer incident that I explained, all of this happened in 2 to 3 month time period.
Wow. And Reggie Sr., so as this is happening, you're in law enforcement, East Coast, West Coast. Now it's getting real heavy in the rap arena. What's happening on the street that you're seeing, and how is law enforcement responding to all this?
Well, naturally, Blondie, these are guys that work for me, and they're in the book and stuff. They were getting a lot of, how would you say it, challenges from that record community. I think, what's that boy name? They put it, Blondie on
DJ Quick.
DJ Quick, and they start dissing us and police, the law enforcement, on albums and records and stuff like that. But I always had an end, as far as my detail was concerned, so end with knowing what they were all about because of Reggie and my knowledge of Suge and stuff. So we kind of dealt with it, but it didn't affect me that much, all that was going on, because I was getting a lot of intel about things that's going on. Because like I said earlier, when I didn't take Suge's offer, I was going to put a lot of that bad security in jail, and I ended up putting about 4 or 5 of his closest people that was on his side, the ones that didn't get killed, in jail and stuff. So I always had that reputation that, I can not associate, but have contact with that industry or the rappers or the people and still do law enforcement. So it didn't affect me that much, you know what I'm saying?
And the reason why he said that didn't kill, because as you'll learn if we get into it, about 7 to 8 people from the time the Suge went to jail, back and forth between each other, eventually got killed during that little time
It
period
was an internal strife.
with internal beef.
And I want to jump around just a little bit. So I think it was the Soul Train, but you can correct me. But I've heard you tell a story about, and I want to say it's a Soul Train, maybe after that party you're talking about. But there was an incident where you talk about you had to pull a gun out, and Tupac, if I understand correctly, was trying to take the gun from you.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
So what happened on that particular, that was the incident that I spoke on a little earlier, so I went out of order, and I apologize to the chief. But, so when I made the call and told the guy that his name, Keith Davis, his father was a major, ended up becoming a deputy chief for LAPD. But I called Keith and told him, hey, don't let those guys in. I told him, but let us in. We coming through the back, you know, me, Suge, and Tupac and them, because they really wanted Tupac to attend the show because they were giving him Rap Artist of the Year for the album Me Against the World, the one that had came out the year prior while he was in prison. And so Keith was saying, okay, y'all come through the back way. I'll get y'all in through the back way. Unbeknownst to me, or us, or this bad timing or whatever, Biggie Small and his entourage and Puffy was coming out the back door as we coming in. Thank God it was just myself and another security guy, Suge and Tupac, and a couple of the Outlaw members that was there. And so the two entourages meet each other and run into each other. And of course, Tupac started acting, you know, I don't want to be disrespectful, but he was a little wild and started yelling towards Diddy and Biggie. And one of their guys that was with them pulled out a gun. But fortunately, thank God, he kept it down. He just pulled it out and was pretty much brandishing it. So me, I'm immediately on him because thank God I had some training, my law enforcement training kicked in, and I'm pointing it at him. And like, dog, please don't raise that gun, begging him. Don't raise that gun. And the security, which was the Nation of Islam brothers, was in the middle. Brothers, you know. I'm like, man, y'all better get out the way. This dude raised his gun. And so, but now Tupac, you know, they think everything you're supposed to do. Pull out your badge, shoot, you know, hey. The things that they believe that law enforcement knows and supposed to do is crazy. Well, Bender had you in prison. And so I'm just pointing the gun at the gentleman and saying, hey, don't point that gun, don't raise it, please. He eventually didn't. He took off and ran. But what the chief was pretty much saying is how Tupac and his wildness and his really thought I should have been able just to shoot the guy because he showed a gun. And if I wasn't going to do it, he was going to take it from me and he was going to do it. Mm-hmm. And so it was situations like that happened.
Okay, thank you. I want to fast forward a little bit to Las Vegas. I know this is something you've talked about extensively on your platform and on other people's platforms, Vlad TV and many others. But can you take us to the night? This is a big event for me personally, even though, again, I'm here locally. But a lot of people that grew up around this was a big, very big moment in time. I think it is clearly for you guys as well. But can you take us to that night in Las Vegas, the Mike Tyson fight, the Orlando Anderson situation, the chain, and leading up to where you were at the 662, and just take us there that night.
Okay. So I had, of course, a security detail up there, about 30 retired or off-duty police officers. But our main function that particular night, because Suge had a nightclub out there called Club 662. So my guys was mainly there to secure and make sure the club was operating properly. Because we had some problems, some trials and errors with the club opening, because we only opened it two nights a week whenever there was a Mike Tyson fight. And so we only opened the club probably about 4 or 5 times. But on the 2 or 3 times prior to that, we had issues with the local security company and all of that. And so this time I was hired, we was doing an event for the Boxing Association of this retired boxer from from the Las Vegas Police Department. And so because we was doing that, their supervisor or management allowed us to have off-duty police officers working outside the club and dealing with crowd control, because a night, Mike Tyson fight night, it was crazy. It was like, if any of you guys know or saw on TV how it was in the All-Star Weekend, it's generally how a Mike Tyson fight was in the mid-90s. And so I was really focused, unfortunately, on making sure the nightclub was operating and secured and everything properly. Because I know for a fact, if I was there with them, which we done all saw the incident on camera when Tupac and them jumped Orlando and kicked him and beat him up, I would have stayed back and talked to Orlando, and they would have saw that I was there, and I believe in my mind that they wouldn't have retaliated that particular night, but who knows? But I say all that to say I was focused more on the nightclub than being with Suge and Tupac that particular night. They had 20 guys with them, you know, the other part or the other type of security, and one of my security guys. The incident happened. I really believe my security guard at the time, his name was Frank Alexander, did the correct thing of, if you ever watched him after the incident happened, he got them at least out of the location and got them away. Of course, Orlando was contacted by security. He didn't want to talk to him. And Vegas the hotel security, which they messed up, they didn't get any horsepower or information from him. They're just like, all right, guy got beat up, he don't want to do nothing, bye. And they let it go. But of course, what they did, and that's why I just said gang banging activity earlier, they got into a car. Keffe D, this guy that's been in the news lately, his claim to saying they were just coming up to the club to talk to us because they knew Suge and had a relationship, and they wanted us to have a fight. That's their version now, today, 2024. But what happened is they were hunting. And,
Let me piggyback, not piggyback, but on the incident itself, I think what the chief related to how it started, that what Reggie is talking about, what led up to the shooting. But at the fight, right after the fight was over or something, they were all in that big lobby that they showed on TV. And Orlando Anderson, who was a person that was held responsible, that one of, what's that boy name?
Trayvon Lane.
Trayvon Lane had his chain taken by these guys.
Attempted.
Well, the word was out at first that they had taken the chain, but they found out they had a death row chain. Trayvon Lane was at a shopping mall in Compton, in Lakewood, and all of a sudden, they saw Trayvon, some of these Southside guys, Orlando and somebody else and some of his people, saw him at the mall and went up and snatched the chain.
Attempted.
They snatched it, but I'll let him tell it, because he talked more. But the story was basically they tried to get the chain from him. And that's what kind of started a feud. And eventually, after that happened, they're at the lobby now with the fight and all. And Tupac, with his wild butt, like he said, want to be hard. There ain't nothing hard about him but his mouth. But he want to be hard. He's there too. But anyway, Tupac is there with Junior and them people, Suge, after the fight. And all of a sudden, Orlando pops up somewhere in there.
Okay.
And he points him out. That's, I think, what she kind of wanted, how that started.
Even go back even further, it's alleged that Diddy, Puffy Combs, had put a bounty out for the chains, the death row chain, because he wanted to put in a video shoot or something like that. And so that's why they try to attempt to take the chain. The only reason I'm correcting him on that, because that's a big thing in the trial that's going on about the attempt and whether it was actually taken or if it wasn't taken. And so a lot of my stuff get watched because I lay out the atmosphere on this particular trial, so I got to watch what I co-sign or say.
The environment.
Yeah. But anyway, So the bounty was put out, and they saw it. But the guy Trayvon Lane, who I speak to and talk to a lot, he always said it wasn't like he went to Tupac, and because his big homies, meaning the guys that was higher up in the mob, Paru gang, was standing there, and they were near Tupac, and he was just said, "Hey, there's the guy," meaning this guy named Neckbone and Bun Tree and Suge and Tupac was in the area. Those are the ones that mainly was seen on the tape kicking him later. He was talking to them, and Tupac on his own took off and went over there and did what he did to Orlando to make him, the beating or the kicking and all of that. And that's why they mounted up and retaliated that night and shot Tupac Shakur
And
and Suge.
And just to follow up on that, I know there's probably some things you can't talk about since there is a trial going on, but just from your perspective, when did you first, if you can speak to this, when did you first hear about this, and what was your reaction, and where did you go once you heard that Tupac and Suge were shot?
Yeah, my father says an hour. It was an hour. It was
I'm
about
old.
3 to 4 hours though. And I only heard that from, because once I get to the hospital, everybody, we used to call it DFO when it was a cop, but they all out there crying and talking and in the parking lot, and that's where, like, what happened? What's going on? And that's when I started getting the intel that, hey, we got into it with some guys at the South Side. At that point, I did not know anyone's name, none of the 4 players or anything. Just that we had got into it with some guys from Southside that was at the MGM, and so that's when those guys was just passing around, and so that's when I stepped to the Las Vegas cop, gave him my card, and told him who I was, and told him, hey, I'll be feeding you some intel through my father. But at that point, Vegas was, and they get mad every time I say this on YouTube or whatever, they didn't care about solving that murder. They wanted to kick it under the rug. And there's some things that we can tell you about the investigation, even when I brought people down and all that, where they didn't want to investigate it because they didn't want to have that, we had had that big OJ trial and all of that. They didn't want that atmosphere in Vegas at that time. And that's my opinion of how they treated it. And so the cop was like, yeah, took my car and all of that. I called Reggie, like, hey, Reggie, this is what's going down. I'm going to be feeding you information, but it's about to be big. It's about to be on and popping in Compton because these dudes is serious. He started making his calls, and to the point where they was just like, all right, yeah, whatever. And
You want to talk, Reggie Sr., about what was happening on your end when you're getting this information and what you're relaying back to the locals?
Okay, I don't know exactly what time it was because he woke me up. I was asleep. But at some point in all this, what they call it, Tupac stuff, I was out in Vegas. Somebody claimed that I was out in Vegas. I was the one standing next to somebody. It was all a mess. But I was at home asleep. He woke me up and told me, hey, Tupac just got shot and Suge. It just happened a little while. It was Southside, and he started telling me the players that he was hearing were involved. Orlando Anderson and about the chain attempted to be snatched at the MGM. So I immediately said, okay, if they're involved, I immediately start calling Las Vegas PD, identifying myself as Lieutenant Reggie Wright from Compton. I have some information to give to the investigators. Well, they spent about 10 or 15 minutes and finally came back and said, well, he's not available, the lieutenant or something. So I said, okay, I have some information. About an hour or two after that, my chief calls me and tells me that Las Vegas contacted him at home and told him that Reginald Wright was trying to get involved in their investigation, and they didn't want any information from him because they had another Reginald Wright out there who was Reggie that wasn't talking to, I guess, the main investigator. What Reggie had someone he was talking to, but they felt as though they couldn't trust the information, so they shut me down from that point, and then they went on from there.
And through this whole process, I know that this is when like the MTV social media that I call it, the MTV and the news was blowing up about who set this thing up and who targeted Tupac. And there's been so much conspiracy that has gone on for years. It still goes on. And there's one theory that I personally don't believe at all, but there's one theory that Suge Knight set this up, and Suge Knight is involved in having Tupac killed because there was rumors of Tupac leaving the record label to start his own. Can you speak to any of that?
Sure. Yeah. One thing and I try to get people to understand on social media is Tupac was out on an appeal bond. And the attorney that was handling the appeal bond was this attorney named David Kenner that was pretty much a high-power attorney. But one thing you don't do is when you're out on an appeal bond and stuff like that and it look like you about to beat the appeal, it's be terminating or trying to leave that particular attorney or that record company that's funding, your appeal. Now, if it's looking bad, and if it don't look like you might be going back to do some more time, you might want to change attorneys. There was no indication of that had happened at that point. Now, maybe after that he might have been, because if it would have been found out, if the shooting wouldn't have happened, I still believe it would have never came to light. The security didn't have any horsepower. Orlando wasn't going up there to say, hey, I'm a victim. This is what happened to me. Nothing would have happened. Tupac wouldn't have got his appeal bond. But if Tupac would have lived from that, he was going back straight to prison on an appeal, on a probation violation, appeal violation. So people are jumping the gun by saying that, he was cheated out of money, he was owed money. If anybody know anything about contracts in the music business, you're not even due monies until 180 days, which is 6 months after the album come out. His first album on Death Row didn't come out until February the 13th, which would have made that August the 13th. So to even say that you're fighting over money yet, you're not even due any money yet. The most you make off of a record, Michael Jackson tell you, and that's what a lot of people, they know they went in. I went in and paid $9.99 for that record. But Michael Jackson told you at the height of his career, the most he ever made off of a record was $1.25. It was less than that for even Tupac. His contract, I think, was only 80 cents a record. At that point, he had even sold 3 to 4 million records. Yeah. So he wasn't even doing any money because you have to pay for your videos. There's so much cost in there. Well, he was in an unrecouped position at that time. So to say that he was owed money, cheated money, is just people on YouTube that's speaking that don't know what they're talking about. But that's all the rumors that you hear. But Tupac, if you see anything with the video where he was talking at the MTV Music Awards, he was hollering, Death Row East is about to come out. When he had the incident, if you ever saw with Nas and all of them, he was promoting Death Row. Tupac had no intentions on leaving Death Row. And if he was, and if that was his plan, then he was the best actor. He should have been nominated for an Oscar because he had us all fooled. I'm telling you. But it doesn't make sense. But that's what all the conspiracies and all the people that want to draw theories and stuff like that is putting out. And it's unfortunate because that's what messed up the case. That's what made Vegas now just decided to do it because he kept talking about it. If Keffe D would have just shut up and went on and by his own happy little way, he would be at home free right now. But he kept talking about it, getting on social media, bragging about it, talking and writing books about it. And where the DA, y'all know, they're not going to be embarrassed too often. They're just not going to take it.
And you may be wondering why he got stupid, Keffe D and stuff, is because he wanted to talk about it, and everybody that was involved in the car with him were dead. Some kind of way they met their demise. And so now he's free to talk, and he wanted, I think, embellish some of it, but he was telling most of it because he was there. But he opened his mouth like Chief and Reggie is saying. If he'd have shut up, there wouldn't have been no investigation leading up to his arrest.
To the arrest,
To
but
the arrest.
two people was alive when he gave the statement
The book.
to Greg Kading's, the author and the murder rap theory, and two people were still alive when he gave the proper agreement to Greg Kading's, and when he gave the statement to Las Vegas PD. He met with both of them. That's what a lot of people just found out yesterday in the hearing, that it wasn't just Greg Kading that he talked to. He also spoke to Las Vegas Metro detectives as well. Yeah.
And what and what's happening? What's happening in L.A. Compton area? I'm going back to the shooting of Tupac. A few days or a couple days later, both of you can speak to this. What happens in Compton area in terms of violence and that kind of stuff?
Well, what happened as a result of it, we talked about different things, but the rivalry was really there and increased once the word on the street or the knowledge was that Southside was responsible for the shooting. That kicked the Bloods up in Southside. So the next day in Compton, we start getting shootings as a result of Tupac getting shot. And it first started, I think, Darnell Brim, who was a Southsider, him and a little girl was coming the next morning, coming out of a store, but some of the Bloods started riding on, I guess it was Mob or whoever, started riding on Southside and caught Darnell, who was an active Southside Crip, and shot him and shot the little girl. And as a result of that, the Southsiders went to Compton and shot 2 or 3 people that same day. And for the next 3 days, we had this back and forth shooting as a result of that. I couldn't get directly involved in it at all because remember, they took me off of it and the chief because of my connection to death row, but we're still getting information. And I think we had, 3 or 4 homicides over the last 5 days during that interim because of that rivalry.
And please fact check me on any of this stuff that I'm speaking to. Frank Alexander, that worked for you, he's passed away. I think he killed himself. But he came out at some point, and I don't know how long after, and was making these claims that you had directed him not to have guns that night. And then I think before he passed, he corrected that and pretty much talked about how that was not the case and talked about some attorney giving that information because it was tight. But can you talk about some of these things with Frank Alexander, and he was Tupac's main security that you put on him, but about this misconception of having guns and not having guns that night for security?
Yeah. So what happened was we were trying to get permits for the nightclub that I was talking about earlier. And so the attorney gave an order because he was helping us get the permits and everything. And he was saying, Reggie, if y'all do everything right, we don't have any problems tonight, we're going to be able to get this permit and get the club put in the Suge Knight's name, because it was still in the people that previously owned the club, we were just like subleasing it from them and their license and all of that. But they said, if everything goes well, I want to be able to get you guys permitted well. So y'all got to make a good showing tonight. He said, and so he said, I suggest you guys not even have any guns inside the club and all of that, because Las Vegas PD is going to be working the parking lot and the doors and all of that. And so I instructed all my guys that were working the club not to carry the guns. So when you get with film documentaries and people that are doing documentaries later in like 2003, 2004, then they get with my guy Frank, who's now upset with me because I kind of disassociated, myself from him, because during Suge's trial, I'm not one of those that believe in cops being hire guns or anything. I believe in good witnesses. Y'all supposed to be witnesses. Y'all supposed to be trained witnesses. I need you to come to court, Frank, to testify to what happened in the MGM, because they're trying to violate Suge now for 9 years probation. Unbeknownst to me at the time, the FBI had gotten to him. And they telling him, don't cooperate, hide out. We don't want you to get subpoenaed. We don't want you coming to court. So I'm making every effort trying to call him and convince him to come to court because you're making me look bad. You're making my security come. All we're supposed to be is good witnesses. It's come to court. I can't tell you what to say. Come to court. That's all I ask you to do. And so in between there, you know, the ghetto come out of me a little bit, and I start making little threats and stuff like that. And like I said, I was young, too much power, and I should have handled it better or talked to him better. So he took offense to it, and he shut down on me. And I was unable to subpoena him. But then, now this 6, 7 years later, he wants to write books. And he wrote a book, thank God, where he tells in the book, hey, I left my gun in the car because at the last minute, Tupac and Suge asked me to drive the Outlaws, and my gun was in my car in valet, and so I left my gun because one thing you don't do is carry no guns in no casinos. I don't care who you are. Please don't go to no casinos with guns, even if you have permits, in your state. And so I teach them, don't go in no casinos with no guns, keep it in your car. But he writes that in the book and tells that in this book. But once he get with the documentaries, that don't sound good. That don't sell DVDs and all of this. So now he's taking the meeting that we had with the attorney and saying, well, Reggie and the attorney told us not to carry guns that night in Vegas. And so that's why I didn't have my gun on me. When what I did was tell people that was working the nightclub not to carry guns, not the people that was signing the bodyguard duties. So that's where that comes
Is that the theory when people start believing because of Frank was saying that Suge had something to do with the having somebody to shoot the guy that's supposed to be leaving your company, drive by and shoot him, or Tupac, and this is Suge supposed to told him, but just shoot me in the head so I can, so it can make it look good.
In fairness, Frank didn't make that statement.
But
it was other
somebody,
people.
yeah.
It was on that DVD, but it wasn't Frank that made the statement.
But that was a crazy theory about Suge Knight had something to do with, I know you mentioned that, with the killing of Tupac. That's the craziest thing I ever heard.
And they all have since backtracked that. Even the main DVD, the one that y'all may have seen Senior in, with Nick Broomfield, the guy from the UK that where Reggie rode around, and I told him he was being tricked by the guy, but he thought he wanted to do a documentary on him and Gaines.
In England.
And I said, he don't care about you and no Gaines. He want to know about Suge Knight and that stuff. But he even since came out and apologized and said, hey, I got it wrong. My documentary was all wrong. And so I always respect him for that. But it's another guy that's on Tubi now and all of that, named R.J. Bonds, who just keep promoting this theory and all of that when they know it's just not true. And I just call it, you trying to muddy up the investigation. Let it play out. But
And you mentioned this earlier. Why do you believe, and you kind of talked a little bit about it, but why do you believe, because this is something that bothers me now being in law enforcement. It bothered me back then prior to being in law enforcement. But why do you believe that when you have really the biggest names in the rap industry, and Tupac being the name, in my opinion, murdered, and Suge Knight shot, why do you believe that this wasn't taken more of an aggressive investigation, even if there's political stuff behind Vegas not wanting to have this attention? What are your thoughts on that, both of you? I'm just curious.
I'll let Reggie Senior go first with that.
I'm still of the belief, and because of the way things was going down, that as Reggie said earlier, they didn't really want, I take it past the police department in the political form. They really didn't want an arrest to be made at the time because they didn't want that type of coverage, negative coverage, to come back to Vegas. Because if we would have made arrests, if they would have taken the information that we had within that first night and the next day, we could have eventually arrested someone in 2 days after the incident, or 3 days. Well, because I think how long it took Tupac, Lord have mercy, Tupac to be
Pronounced.
pronounced.
It was 6 days later. It was on
Yeah.
the 13th.
Yeah, but so doing that, I guess they had conversation. I'm talking about the police department and the officials. And they were concerned about the publicity because it was getting plenty of publicity for those days that Tupac was still alive, until he was actually pronounced. But once he was pronounced and stuff, they knew if an arrest would be made, they were going to have trial and all that. And that would keep coming back to Vegas and interrupt with because at that time they were really going, Vegas was going family oriented.
The theme parks.
The parks and all that. They didn't want that kind of publicity to come. So actually they called back the two investigators that had came to Compton because as Reggie said, he was getting some guys to talk to him. My guys, Blondie and them was on the street. They had found the car that the guys were in. They had found a stash with a possible gun in the shooting within 2 days of the incident because of intel. But they didn't really want to hear it. But they did send two investigators down here. But once Tupac had was pronounced, and it was obvious that if they make an arrest following all these leads, it was going to be a big publicity thing or public thing. So what they did, they called back the two investigators and made them come back and said, leave evidence, don't bring anything back. That told me and my chief right then, they don't want to solve this. And then we found out to talking to some other people that they didn't want that to happen. And they didn't. They didn't get interested again until Orlando Anderson, the main person that we believe did the shooting, he got killed in an unrelated incident in Compton about 4 or 5 months later or something after the shooting. But
99, so.
at some point, Orlando Anderson, who that boy? But anyway, he was still involved in all kind of stuff. He saw some guys at a car wash that owed his uncle, Keffe D, some money for some dope and stuff, went and confronted them at the car wash, and the shootout ensued there in Compton, and he got killed, Orlando. But the moment Orlando got killed, in my opinion, and evidence kind of substantiated, is that all of a sudden, two investigators showed back up at Compton PD, recovered all the evidence we had, took everything back, and kind of opened up an investigation then. That really validated to me that they went, because they knew if they solved the case and closed it, it wouldn't be no trial. So you wouldn't have that publicity. That's why I really believe it went down that way.
And what also made us know that not to be true is I had brought two witnesses that was in the car behind Tupac and to talk to him. I brought them down because they said, hey, they're not cooperating and all of that. So I had Reggie and his team to reach out to him and said, hey, I'll meet y'all down at the Compton PD and bring the witness there. They come down and they say, the two investigators on the case goes, why y'all coming down with Reggie Jr.? We tried to contact you. Why y'all didn't come when we were trying to contact you? Picked an argument with them and wouldn't even show them the six-pack. Well, a cop would not show at least a six-pack. If you got two witnesses there that's saying that they're going, now if you believe Reggie Sr. or Jr. told them who to pick out, then I understand that. But there's no evidence. They never said that. They just said, we're not going to show y'all this six-pack because we don't like who brought y'all down here. So
but that was setting up what you were saying, Chief. That was setting up the theory that we have and all that they didn't want it solved. Las Vegas didn't want it solved because they didn't want that to come back.
The mayor of Mr. Goodman at the time, he was a reserve police officer. He should see. They say he took off his hat immediately as a reserve cop and became mayor and started directing the whole scene at the location.
Wow.
And so.
And it wasn't long after that Biggie is killed. The
6
time frame on that.
months.
6 months later. And Orlando was killed much later on.
Right.
But going to Biggie, I'll kind of pose the same question because that case is still, I believe, there's no one been arrested. That's still unsolved. Why do you believe that case is still unsolved?
I believe it's solved.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe it's solved. They have all the information and everything. It's just the suspect is
Deceased. I think they closed it, once they made that
They didn't
deal,
close it. They were talking about closing it,
closing.
but the detective is a guy named Darren Dupree, who just recently retired, and he said they left it open. It's not a, it's a open case, but not an investigative case or something like that. But there has a term that they were trying or considering doing, where they just case closed and solved with no arrest or
But
something
then
like
it had
that.
something to do
But
with
they
the
never
mother,
did it.
the mother selling.
Well, that
the
was
case.
something different where the mother
Okay.
got a settlement where she was suing them civilly. And, but someone can still be prosecuted for that case if it came
Still
up.
open.
But the only person, to be honest, that's involved in that is considered to be suspects in that is Suge Knight and the person that's dead.
Poochie.
Okay. And there's been a lot of information on that. That's a good point. And I don't know if there's anything that this small group can do, but that is something that still to this day bothers me because there's so much information out there. There's a lot of conspiracy on this one too, but there's so much information out there that this is a solvable case. And even if, I just had this conversation with someone earlier this morning, even if you can't charge somebody with a crime, we owe it to their loved ones, the victim's loved ones, to tell them this is who
And they've done
harmed you.
that. They have done
They
that.
have done that?
With the mother.
Okay, that's good to hear.
And that's why she
Dropped
hasn't
the case.
pursued the lawsuit any further or anything. She said on the Breakfast Club, a radio station about 3 or 4 years ago, or YouTube channel, that she believed 98 to 99% of what happened to her son that is reported in the book Murder Rap or the documentary Murder Rap.
Wow. I want to fast forward just a little bit here too, because you mentioned briefly, Reggie Sr., about Orlando, the suspect who's been alleged to have shot and killed Tupac, which is what he's known as everywhere if you look him up. Is it fair to say or accurate to say that you were the first on scene to his homicide, or were you one of the first?
Well, not on scene, but in the area. What had happened was when I was saying Orlando, him and Luau confronted some other guys that owed Keffe D some money at a car wash right near Compton High School and away from the police department, about 2 blocks from the police department. But on that particular afternoon, I was on the rear lot talking to my 2 guys, Blondie and they're getting ready to clear briefing, and we heard gunshots coming from over by Compton High. And dispatch then put out there were gunshot victims at the car wash over on Alondra, which is 3 blocks away from the police department. I'm on the rear lot talking to them. As soon as I heard that they were gunshot victims, I started off the rear lot to go in that direction. Now, I had a car that you would think is undercover, but everybody in Compton knew it anyway. I had this particular car had bells and whistles on it, the whole shot. I took off the rear lot, and I started going in that direction to the car wash. But before I can get to the main street, all of a sudden I see this guy out in the middle of the street trying to flag me down. You know, police flying somewhere, and he's trying to flag me down. As I got close to him, I recognized it was Lil Al, Orlando Anderson's best buddy. And he's trying to, and I've been knowing him since he was a baby. So he flagging me down and Reg, and I go, what's going on? But I'm thinking I got to get to this shooting. But then 2 and 2 came to 4, and he said, hey, Red, they shot Lando. He's in the passenger seat of the car, you know. And I go, oh, excuse me. But this boy is involved in that shooting I'm going to. So I hooked him up right quick and took him as I walked up to the passenger side of this car. And Orlando is, to me, dead. I mean, he laying out, shot in all kind of way. And I called for paramedics, and even my chief rolled to the scene. They all started coming to the scene, and then we took off and went to, not the scene, where I stopped him and kind of detained him and saw Orlando dead. But paramedics came and took him to the hospital, and he was pronounced dead at the hospital. But when I got to the scene at the car wash, it was about 4 dead, I think, 3 or 4, that he had shot in the crossfire. So that was actually the scene, but I wasn't first to the scene of the homicide because there were other cops there while I was dealing with Lil Al.
I'll say something that's funny, comical, that both Tupac allegedly said to the first responder that responded to them, when he asked him who shot you, he said, F you, to the cop. And this guy, Orlando, this gentleman by the name of Ray Richard that worked for his gang unit, asked him what happened. His last words were supposed to be "F you."
Well,
It was
he
just to
told
say
them where
that
to
those
go.
two, that they said the last things. But it's a series on Vlad TV called Compton Cops that I did on Vlad TV channel with Reggie Sr., Bobby Ladd, and this cop named Fred Reynolds. If y'all get a chance to go in there,
Your books are here. Yeah.
if y'all get a chance to go there and check them out on Vlad TV, it'll be interesting, and it goes more in detail about that incident.
I want to ask a little bit about, this is more of a personal question. And at this point, this is all personal to me. So if you guys want to leave, we can just hang out, the three of us. Is Kevin Hackey still alive?
Kevin Hackey's still alive.
Okay.
He's a good friend of mine now.
Okay.
No.
Kevin Hackey was one of the people working for Reggie, and he came out early on. I remember he was in that documentary you talked about, but I never hear much about him much. The crash unit, there was rumors that Rafael Perez and
David
Mack and that whole era, and I'm trying to think of the name of what they called that then, Rampart Division. Did they have anything to do and intersect with any of this stuff at all?
It's unfortunate that comes out. I never met those gentlemen a day before in my life. I've always said if they walked in and slapped me, I wouldn't have known who they were prior to them being on TV. But I get asked that question a lot because people say, well, he used to work for, they the guys that killed Biggie Small, and they worked for Death Row and all of this. And I'll be like, but they snitched on 75 fellow co-workers. They never once mentioned Reggie Wright. Why am I such this bad guy? Where they gonna tell on 70-something co-workers on the Rampart case, but never mention me.
Yeah.
And so I never met them, but it's hard to say because y'all know from family members, especially law enforcement officers, everybody that knows a cop, don't you know so-and-so? Mm-hmm. They believe we all know each other.
Right.
When we really don't. It's really a bigger community.
I want to bring this up. This stuck out to me earlier. You mentioned this, and I think you've said this publicly, but you said earlier you had involvement with really somehow motivating Keffe D to start speaking out. Can you talk about how you did this to get him on platforms and speak out?
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's coming to maybe bite me in the butt a little bit because that's towards his defense currently to why he's been making up the stories is what he said, which is going to hurt him because he's way too detailed in his stories. But his claim has always been that Reggie Wright and them was telling these stories, and so I decided to make some money to tell these stories. But I am the one to start passing his phone number to people like Vlad TV and to this other channel called Art the Dialogue and Kel Capone, where he got on and pretty much was trying to promote his book and told those stories, BET Chronicles, and told his story. And because I knew him, because I had a YouTube channel, and I was trying to get him on my channel, but he wanted money, and I wasn't going to pay him, but I turned him on to other people and was leading these people to the questions that I wanted answered. And he told them. And I think that's what made Las Vegas. And I even heard on the hearing yesterday that the DA said that's pretty much why they decided to go ahead and pick up this case 20-some years later, is because some of the statements that he made, like, I beat the government, I beat cancer, and I beat Las Vegas PD. And that made him upset.
Didn't the judge or something dismiss? I mean, wouldn't let him out or something?
She
Yesterday.
She denied the claim to dismiss because he said that he made up the stories.
And why do you think it took so long? Because I think it was years when he started to come out and say this, Keffe D. Why did you think it took so long? I know you talked about, when you say enough about the government, they're going to come after you. But why did it take, if I'm correct, years in him speaking out on platforms for this to happen where he's now facing charges?
I think that's coming up with him now.
Well, and that's mainly because social media's, we just got like this. People didn't know, I didn't know anything about YouTube until about 2016, 2017. And so but it's not like the story hadn't been told. The story was told to law enforcement officials when he's facing 25 years to life in 2008, when he had something to lose. You get caught lying, you're gonna do 25 years to life.
And I guess, like you said, YouTube and all that, and him talking and the book and all that came to public knowledge. Like the young lady right there said, she loved Tupac. So she glad he could run his mouth so he can be held accountable for it. And I think that's what blew it up and put more pressure on Las Vegas to at least arrest somebody and deal with somebody about it. And he opened up the door for them.
From my speaking with the DA that's handling the case, if he would have remained quiet, it would have kept going. He's a young 44-year-old deputy DA that convinced his DA to let me investigate and work this case. And let me open up this investigation. And that's what happened.
Wow. We're going to open up here shortly to some questions from the audience, and I'll have my assistant Gina go around with a microphone if you have. And we have some swag from Bomb First, correct? And we're okay?
It's a little bit, but yeah, y'all
is that
the
okay?
boss.
So what we'll do when we get to that piece, but I have a couple other questions to close up here. When we get to that, if you have a question and it's a good question, you might get some Bomb First swag. But I got to ask this question since I have you guys here. Same theme, but different person. Well, let me ask it two ways. P. Diddy. He's had a reputation for decades. Why has it, number one, do you believe it's true, if you can speak to that? And number two is, why do you believe it's taken this long to hold him criminally accountable?
I believe it's a learned behavior. When I say that, most don't know that from 97 on, Suge was incarcerated, and I was fortunately to start running the company and got on into the music side of the business, where I worked for E1 Entertainment all the way up until 2018, which was a private independent company, and I didn't put out some albums on my own. But I ran their fro from 97 to 2002. From my experience, a lot of the executives, such as Jimmy Iovine and Clyde Davis, Russell Simmons, I'm gonna stop calling names because I don't have no money to get sued. But they all kind of push the I want to be politically correct, the gay agenda. Sorry if I offend anyone. And so they kind of open with it in the business. And we heard of the Harvey Weinstein situations and stuff like that. So you learn that on the gay side. Now the women, the freak offs and all of that stuff, not flying them across state lines, I'm not going to admit to any of that, but I have seen it all. And I'm not saying to lure anybody across state lines, I'm not saying that. And definitely, that's one thing I say about Suge Knight and the people I was around, was no juveniles or people underage or not willing participants, and definitely not the drugging. It was a lot of marijuana, a lot of weed.
Yeah, Snoop.
To be honest, Snoop didn't participate in stuff like that. He's more a standoff type guy. But Suge and Tupac and Reggie Wright Jr., man, people like that were a little different.
See, you learn something every day. Every day.
And so my point is, it was a lot of that going on in the business, right? I personally think a lot of the allegations against Diddy are going to be found to be unfounded. It's a bunch of money grab, i.e. the lady with Jay-Z. She done been caught. I can point out to y'all six inconsistent statements that she done made. And so, to answer your question is, they learned it. It was around it. It was accepted. Got out of hand. I mean, Diddy took it to a level that he took it to another level. But yeah, it's a learned behavior, and it was the environment that everybody was in.
And he seemed untouchable for just so long. I know there was a shooting that happened, and he didn't get in trouble for it.
The incident at UCLA with the football coach.
Yeah.
You talking about the one at the nightclub
Yes.
with J-Lo? I mean, even if you believe what Keffe D alleged, you know, the fire that happened at the college. So Diddy has,
Wasn't it also because he had so much money and connections?
I think it was the
much money and
connections,
connections,
and
yeah.
when you're making people money, a lot of things go away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people would blame it on the alcohol company and them fighting and they've stopped protecting him and all of that. I'm not big on conspiracies, but you'll wonder why. Why now? Why is it coming out now? Even with Cassie, if we wouldn't have saw the tape of that happening, would we be as compassionate towards her?
You guys know what he's referring to about Cassie? If you don't, this was P. Diddy's girlfriend, and that video where he's whooping on her at the hotel.
But that's what make us believe her and feel bad for her. But the other things on the other side, she seemed to be a willing participant on a lot of it. She was the one ordering up the men. But she's still a victim, and I'm not going to bash a victim. I had to learn better about that.
All right, we're just about to get to Q&A, and we're going to wrap up about 12:30-ish, give or take. It's just a little past 12 now. You guys doing okay?
Oh, yeah. Great.
Okay. Right now, if you could share with this audience, and by the way, I just have to say this, the fact that we have law enforcement and community members in the same room listening to the same subject material, that says a lot to our community,
Yes.
and that's a big deal. So I want to say I'm very honored to have that. But in closing, before we go to Q&A from the audience, and we'll start with Reggie Sr., what lessons learned do you have in your life experience in law enforcement and just in general that you want to share with the audience?
Well, like I talked about, what contributed to my success in law enforcement was being interactive with the community. If you're in law enforcement, you need the community in order to do a great job. Now, you can do a job one way, but I mean a good job that's appreciated by all. You need the community involvement. I don't care. You can be a Reggie Wright or anybody. You got to. So, being able to be fair, be straight, and also be stern. Because I had some hardcore guys that I dealt with would tell me on their mama, what their mama doing, because they trusted that me being fair. So that's very important. And that's what I learned. And that's what young officers or people still out there involved in it, man. You can't always knock them upside the head and they're going to tell you something. No. But if you kind of just get a little of their confidence and they trust you a little bit, you'd be surprised what they'll talk to you about and back you up on it. So that's kind of what.
Thank you. And Reggie Jr.?
I'll go more on the business side, you know, just instead of the law enforcement side. Well, this always, you know, I had a problem with, and my problem with in too deep. My father used to always tell me, you don't got too deep, you in too deep. And just to know how to separate your character and your values from, don't let them just be easily persuaded or compromised, because I had a lot of power in law enforcement at a young age, and then even in the music business. And I just wish, it's a lot of things that I did wrong, and I wish that I, could take back. But the main thing is just always just try to have good character, and, and do the right thing, and you'll go a long way. It's just what I learned, instead of just going with the flow and let people do whatever they want.
Yeah.
Because they will eventually respect you, especially coming from the law enforcement side. Once you go over there, people will really respect. They look at you. I talk a lot of stuff on YouTube and stuff like that. I haven't been a cop in over 25, 27 years. Done did things, I got in trouble with the law and everything. And people still say, you was a cop. It's always going to stick with you, being a cop. And so that's all I would just say, is always try to keep the respect, and don't tarnish the badge if you can.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move to questions from the audience. And real quick, Gina has the mic.
I've got
And
the mic.
do we have the swag bag that they gave us we could get? Did you get that?
I did not.
Who took the swag bag? So, okay, we'll try to find that.
All I received was my shirt. That was my shirt. But actually, I did get a request for a question first.
Okay, if
there.
you can
I
just
can
go around the
forward to
room
Ted,
and I'll-
secondly, but Mimi, right? You had a question?
Thank you. So yes, I do have a question, but I did want to speak to your last comment in regards to everything going on with Diddy. I used to work magic show in Vegas every year.
Yeah.
And I have to agree with you. A lot of the things that they're talking about in regards to the freak-offs and the parties and stuff that he used to have, a lot of it was consensual. And so I do think some of it is a money grab. But my question is in regards to something that Reggie Sr. had said when you were discussing the 90s. And one of the things that I've studied was in regards to the war on drugs. Basically that time period when Ricky Ross went to jail, he had been working with Danilo Blandone, who was a DA informant, and, he basically flipped him, and, Ricky Ross ended up going to jail. But then you had Gary Webb come in, and he did that article, The Dark Alliance, I think like in 96 or 97, talking about the CIA, Contras, and then you had the town hall meetings in Compton, which, by the way, I'm originally from Compton.
What they call a social club that was under the direction, or more or less the supervision, of the probation department. And we were like Imperial Courts were the Orientals, Nicholson Gardens were Huns, Jordan Down projects were Surveillance. In LA, you had the Farmers and all that. That was doing my whole area, in the 50s. But we were called social club. But trust me, bro, it wasn't nothing about social. It's just that the probation directors would have to come and gather us like every other weekend or something and have us doing positive things and all that. And we went for it. We did it. But then when they leave and go back to their home, that's when the gang activity started. And we had our rivalries and stuff. But what I respected, as I said before, was we would fight on the gym field and stuff, and you fought your enemy. Later on, by the time that I was at Edison or getting ready to go to the police department, that's when this gang stuff started, where you start having drive-by shootings and all that kind of stuff. But that mentality came, I believe, from the guys that had gone to the war, that was drafted and stuff, that got trained and into this warfare, and then brought it back to the hood. And that's how that got started. But the actual gangbang with the different sets, Chief had talked about how the division between the Crips and the Pyrus, that didn't start really until the 70s, around 72 to 76. And that's what's kind of got a lot of notoriety because it became public then because of the Terror Tashima shooting. But before then, it was just brothers in the hood, just, whatever happened. It wasn't getting that type of publicity.
We're going to ask if you ask a question, if you could please stand. Please, thank you.
A couple more items, Teddy. We'll give you this.
Hi, my name is Nancy Black, and I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you for guys like you, because like 40 years ago, I would have never been around no police. I grew up in Watts. I grew up in Imperial Courts. I lived on Grape Street. I went to Markham Lock, and I went to all the schools out there, and I gang banged, I dope slanged, and I hanged in the hood. But see, I thank you for having people like my uncle, because see, I didn't trust the police. I didn't like the police. You know, I was there when Colors first came out, Watts Towers, all of that. I was right there. My mom and them used to pick bottles and take them to Simon Le Greek to build Watts Towers. I grew up in Watts.
Race was the same that went on once the sheriffs took over. But it was mainly a numbers game and a political game because of what we later learned and saw how a bunch of our council members and mayors was indicted, and they felt that the police department was working with the FBI to get them indicted.
Okay, he hit the nail on the head. The whole move, trust me, was a political move. Even the council, definitely the community, they weren't discouraged with the Compton Police Department wholly, because a lot of people understood that they had a lot of, myself included, a lot of people from the community or near the community working as Compton police officers. So they appreciated our efforts. Now, we weren't perfect. You know, a lot of things went unsolved. Some people in the community wanted the sheriff to come in, but 95% of them didn't. But the whole move for, I called it at the time a hostage takeover, the whole was behind what the mayor and the council wanted. And that's all that was all about. But as far as what we done and all that, you know, we were okay with that. And I think the community was for the most part.
And another thing that's missed behind that, the only people that didn't get hired, or they had a word that they used to say that went into the sheriff's department, were the chief and the captains. Well, Reggie had even became a captain, so they just demoted him down from captain to lieutenant, because in an organization like that, that's, you know, that's what they said was a lieutenant in their thing was captains at our department. But the whole thing was, if they were so bad and all of that, why did the sheriff's department take on 95% of them, you know, and took them within their organization? Will always be my argument to that.
All right, as we close here, thank you guys again, but we have something special for you both. We can applaud in just a second, but I want to present something, because the way we do it here in SeasSide is when we have special guests come, we want to make sure we honor them appropriately. So I want to first present Reggie Wright Sr. with this plaque, and I'm going to read it here, and it says, if I can read through this, in recognition for your incredible and historical knowledge into the origins of major gangs in the Compton, California area, as well as your ability to educate law enforcement officials how to have a better community based on authentic relationships with all members of society. So I'd like to present this to you, Reggie Sr.
This is beautiful. I don't want to pat myself on the back, but unfortunately, I have a lot of facts like this and stuff, and I have a little office full of it. But this definitely has a place already waiting for this. This is beautiful. Thank you. And thank you guys, because it wouldn't have been possible without all of you guys. Thank you.
And now I just want to point something out, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but Reggie Wright Jr., this is his first time speaking to a live law enforcement audience. Is that correct?
Definitely.
Yeah. So this is a big deal.
Law enforcement.
That's right. So I want to present this to you, Reggie Wright, in recognition for your courage and willingness to share your life experiences to provide others with a better understanding of one of the most historic eras in the hip-hop rap music industry. We applaud you for enlightening all of us with your unique and powerful ability to share your story. We are also honored to be your first speaking engagement to a law enforcement audience. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
Really appreciate this. And like I said, once again, shout out to Chief Burgess. Burgess, I'm sorry. I've been calling him Nick. I didn't want to call him that in front of y'all. But thank you, Chief. I think I done got a new friend. Yeah,
Right on.
thank you.
Thank you guys for coming to Seaside for this speaking series, and look out for the next one. They're going to make their way out here shortly, but this is your opportunity to speak with them. And I know the local news is here if you guys choose to speak to them. It's your call. Thank you all for being here in Seaside. Take care.